Okay. We finished up the plot before Jesus, except we didn't do John 12:9. Meanwhile, a great crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but because just they wanted to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. Okay. What's going on there? I guess the question is, why do people come to church? Do you come for the spectacle? Do you come because your mom makes you? Do you come because you want your neighbors to think you're a good person? Do you come to worship Jesus Christ and become a better Christian? These people came to see Jesus, but they also came because they wanted to see Lazarus, who'd been raised from the dead. Okay. There was a preacher on TV who had a healing ministry. I never was there. I never was in his congregation. I don't know how valid it was. I do know God heals. He's healed. He's answered my prayers on numerous occasions. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but he decided at some point in time that he needed to expand past just having a healing ministry, and so a couple Sundays he started teaching how to live your life and how to have victory over sin and this and that and the other. And within a month, his congregation had dropped to a half because they weren't seeing any miraculous healings on Sunday morning. So they were coming for the spectacle. A lot of people do that. Some people do that for this reason. And that's not a bad reason to come. If you're sick, come. We'll anoint you with oil. We'll pray for you. And God will arrange a healing for you, either here or at the gate. He'll arrange a healing for you. These people had come. The Pharisees, Sadducees, and the Pharisees came because they were in a plot to catch Jesus and to put away with him. A large crowd came because they heard about Lazarus and wanted to see Lazarus was alive. Okay, triumphal entry, which was on Sunday. John 12:12. And read down through 15.
The next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel." Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, as it is written, "Do not be afraid, daughter Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt."
All right. It had been prophesied that the Savior would come on a colt. That the King of Israel would come on a colt. What would that mean in that day and age? What if he rode into town on a black horse? Hey.
Good morning. The white horse is purity.
White horse is what?
Purity. Shows purity, doesn't it?
White generally indicates purity. But what if he came in on a gray horse or a black horse in that day and time? What would that be saying to the people of the town?
He was, I'm not sure, but does that mean he's bringing war?
He's coming to conquer. Good job. Nice. Okay, he's coming to conquer. What if he rides in on a white horse?
Surrender? Surrender?
He's coming in to make peace. Now what if he comes in on a colt? Or on a donkey?
Well, that's humility, that's being humble.
He's humbling himself and he's saying, I want a treaty, or I don't want to fight, I want to negotiate. On a white horse, they rode in on a white horse. After the battle was over, they won. And they came over to take control of the town. Coming in on a colt or a donkey is an act of humility, saying, let's negotiate, let's come up with a peace treaty, let's don't kill let's don't kill a bunch of your people and come to our people. Let's come up with some kind of a remedy for this. So he's coming in humility. He's coming. So that's all understood back then. So there's really no reason for anybody to think he's coming as a conquering king. They understand all this. He's coming in on a donkey. And everybody's shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is the King of Israel. And they're exalting him all the way, and they're making a bunch of noise. Now, interesting about the triumphal entry is it's in all four Gospels, okay? Which makes it very, very, very important. Something that God is trying to tell us something very clear here. Now, some Gospels will have one event, other Gospels will have another event. Not everything everybody talked about is in all the Gospels. Matthew talks about Jesus the King. Mark talks about the works of Jesus, the healings, the parables, the teachings, and stuff like that. Luke talks about the human side of Jesus. Jesus the man, Jesus the human being, the suffering of Jesus, the pain on the cross and all that. That's what Luke talks about, and John talks about the spirituality of Jesus, his relationship with the Father and all that. But all four of them talk about the triumphal entry. Matthew talks about the kingship. Mark talks about the works that are going to be done, the salvation that's going to come from it. Luke talks about the humanity of it, and John talks about the spirituality. But you got to read all four of them to get the complete and total picture of all four facets of Jesus Christ. You got to read all four of them. Now, in one of the accounts, some of the Pharisees ran up to Jesus and said, "Tell them to shut up. Tell them to shut up. They're making too much noise. They're going to cause a riot." What Jesus responded? Said, "If I tell them to shut up, the rocks will cry out. Creation will cry out that the King is coming. If I tell them to be quiet, the rocks will cry out. Creation will song." Do you mean that literally? No, not maybe. Have you ever watched cattle or horses at daybreak? Have you ever slowed down enough to watch them? And the last couple of weeks, I've been studying about this, and I've been thinking about it. And the last couple of weeks, and I noticed it before. I've noticed it over the years. At daybreak, if you look at the cattle out in the pasture, they will go to the fence closest to the road, facing east, and they will stand there and watch the sun come. I'd be driving to work, and now they don't do it if it's a cloudy day. But I would notice I'd be driving to work, and I'd notice the cattle be standing against the east fence, and they'd just be staring. All of them be staring in the same direction. And the horses over here, the old cowboy that comes to church every once in a while. lives up
Terry,
the road.
Terry McKnight.
Midnight.
Yeah. He had three horses, and for a while I was driving over to Mitchell, and I'd go through there every morning just at daybreak. And those horses would be standing against the fence, looking across the road. And after about the third day, I thought, what are those horses looking at? Because he's pastured, there's a strip of woods there, and his pasture is down below that. Why do those horses come up here? So I pulled over one morning and I walked over, and I'm standing there looking at the horse and I'm talking to him. Looking around, I thought maybe there was a salt block or something over there. And then the sun just came up in the first rays of spring, and I turned around, they were staring straight to the sunrise as the sun was coming up. And every morning when I came along and the sun was coming up and it was time right, those horses would be standing in that field. By the time I got to the truck and got in the truck, the sun was up and they turned around and they walking back to the woods.
That is so neat.
I've been outside a lot of times early in the morning when the sun's coming up. Our horses will stand there in one section where it's open. That's where our horses stand every morning.
And what?
They stand on the east side of the fence in that open area till the sun gets up and they.
All of creation will stop and worship God at it says that when Jesus died on the cross, the sun did not give her light. It didn't say a cloud came up. It didn't say there was an eclipse. It didn't say the sun was covered. It said the sun did not give her light. When the Creator was dead for that period of time, whatever that period of time was, the sun did not shine. She serves only the Creator. She doesn't serve us. He doesn't serve Mother Nature. She serves her Creator. And when Jesus died, when the Creator was gone for those few seconds, or for that hour, for those minutes, whatever it was, for that period of time, the sun did not give its light. Because the Creator was not there to be worshipped, and the sun did not worship anything else in this world. Now sometimes we need to stop and remember who we are and why we are, and just notice. If you've ever been on a deer stand in the morning, nature comes alive when the sun hits that horizon. When the sun hits that horizon, the woods just comes alive. The birds start to sing. Things start to scurry. It's the beginning of the day. And all of nature worships God. We need to slow down and do the same. You know, rushing around. As I was driving around at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I missed all that, and all of a sudden I retired and I kind of slowed down and started to notice all that was happening. And it brought back these verses where the sun didn't shine, or the sun didn't give her light, and Jesus said, "It will do me a good to shut them up, because a big day's coming, and if they don't exalt me, the rocks." And he meant that literally. I'm convinced he meant that. So remember that. Okay. Now, shortly after this, and it's not on there, but if you go to Matthew 21, the very next day, as he's coming back into town, it's the withered fig tree is the next event. And somehow he didn't get that in there. So it's in Matthew 21. He's coming along, he sees fig tree, and he's hungry, so he goes up to it and he looks for some figs. And the scripture says it was not the time for figs, so there were no figs. And if you remember a couple Easters ago, we went all through the fig tree thing, and all the way back to the Garden of Eden. The fig tree thing is all the way back to the Garden of Eden. What did they cover their sin with? What was their remedy for sin in the Garden of Eden?
Fig leaf.
Fig leaves. And the fig tree represented what? What fig tree represented?
Israel.
Israel was the remedy for sin. Israel would give us the Savior. Israel would provide us with the Bible and the instruction and everything that we need to have victory over sin. So, and then because the fig tree didn't have figs on it, Jesus condemned it. Why did he condemn Israel? When he condemned the fig tree, he condemned Israel. Why did he condemn Israel? Because he knew they were going to put him on the cross and then reject the sacrifice. And then it passed on to the Gentiles, and we picked up the ball and we started running. So, Israel's out, right? No. Israel's the key to everything, to the very end. Where does the New Jerusalem come down? Right on Mount Zion. 1,500 miles, 4 different directions, and 1,500 miles high. You ever think about 1,500 miles high? How high is the atmosphere?
I know it's gotta be under around 14,000 feet, because I know when I was at Pikes Peak, I was dizzy. And you,
Mount Everest is 25, and they generally have to wear oxygen masks to get to the top of Mount Everest. So it's between 15 and 25 somewhere. And if you live in the mountains, you can go higher than somebody who lives in Indiana. But man, when you get to 14,000 feet, you live in Indiana, it's a long walk to anywhere. It's a long walk to get a drink of water in the kitchen. But we're talking 1,500 miles. Well, just before that, it says a new heaven and a new earth. We're going to be spiritual beings there. We're not going to be breathing oxygen, so we can just go whatever we want. So, there's no discrepancies there. It's a new heaven, it's a new earth, and we'll be spiritual beings, and we won't be breathing oxygen or pumping blood or doing any of the things that we do. We won't have to worry about the material stuff. All right, let's go down to Mark 11, 15 to 17. Mark, Luke, and John. Mark 11. To 17. We'll start at 12. That's where the passage starts, and go down to 17.
The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say this. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "It is not written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations,' but you have made it a den of robbers."
Okay. Remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Gentiles and how the Gentiles were factored in? Well, he quotes from the Old Testament here, "My house will be called the house of prayer for Israel." Right?
For all.
Huh?
For all.
For all nations. My house will become a house of prayer for all nations. But you have made it a den of thieves. What's been stolen?
Gentile courts. The Gentile courts.
Gentile courts. There's two things that have been stolen here. Two facets of it. There's the materialistic stealing and there's the spiritual stealing. The spiritual stealing was they had taken the Gentile porch away and turned it into a marketplace. And so there was no place for the Gentiles to come and hear about salvation and hear about God who loved them just as much as the Israelites. There was no place for them to be factored in. There was no place for them to be taught. There was no place where they were welcome. Okay. Now on a material side, what's being stolen?
A place for worship? The place for worship, or the place to listen?
Well,
Or
that's a spiritual side.
Okay.
What's the material side? They were extorting money from people from other lands. See, when you came in, I bring my lamb in. I go out and I get my best lamb in the pasture. And I pick it up and I bring it to Israel, go to celebrate the Passover, and I take it to the temple, and they're going to take it and they're going to cut it, jugular vein right there, collect the blood, throw the blood on the altar, have a sacrifice for my sin. Then they section it up, and they keep part of it for use in the temple, and they give me back part of it so that I can go have a Passover feast with my family and roast or cook the rest of it. Okay? What was happening was I would bring my lamb in, and they'd go all over that lamb, and they'd find a little cut on his hoof or something, and they'd say, "Oh, this lamb's not perfect. We'll sell you one of ours." What's that all about? You have made my house a den of thieves. And then they would sell it to you at an exorbitant price. And your lamb wouldn't be worth anything. And then they, according to Josephus, they would take the lamb and say, "Well, you don't want to carry this lamb back home. We'll just use it in the temple." And as soon as you were gone, they'd sell your lamb to somebody else. Also, in the temple, you were not allowed to use any money but Israeli money. Okay. So I would come in from Greece, and I'd have drachmas. So I'd come in and I'd say, "Well, how much in drachmas?" "Well, we can't take drachmas. You got to use shekels. You got to use Israeli money." Okay. So we will exchange the money for you for a fee. So if a drachma was worth 10 shekels, they would give you 5 shekels for a drachma. When I was in Vietnam, a lot of guys made a bunch of money by exchanging piastres for regular money, for military. If you go to town with the military, the piastres were worth less than the military money. So you could go to town and you could buy a whole bunch of piastres for military dollar. It wasn't a U.S. dollar. It was called military script. So you could go and you could buy a whole bunch of piastres for the military money. Then you could come back and trade the piastres for military script. And if you took $10 to town and got the piastres, you could come back and get $12 in military money. So a lot of guys would go in, they'd buy $100, they might have been backwards, I don't remember exactly how it worked. But they'd go in with $100 and they'd buy a bunch of piastres, and then they'd come back and they'd change it for $120. Then they'd take the $120 in, buy the piastres, come back, and they'd send $200 home to their mother or to, it was legal. It wasn't dishonest. But the people in town wanted the military script more than they wanted the piastres because Vietnam was bankrupt. I mean, it was just worthless paper. So they would sometimes give you twice as many piastres as the dollar was really worth. You could come back and trade them for twice as many dollars. And we were making $200 a month because we were in a war zone. So a lot of guys had families back home and they had to feed them. So they go in and buy the piastres on payday, and they come back, change it back, go back the next day, do that for 3 or 4 days, and send $200 home to their wives. And it was legal. It was legal. They weren't doing anything dishonest. But this wasn't legal. These were real coins. These were real gold coins, real copper coins, real silver coins. And they weren't just worthless paper, but they were only giving these people half as much money because of the technicality. And they were ripping them off. Okay. So Jesus looked at it on 2 levels. He said, "You have turned my house into a den of thieves." Now, for a long, long time, I was kind of raised in a Pentecostal church. And of course, in a Pentecostal church, last Sunday or last Saturday, we sinned greatly. Why?
We had a good time.
We had a good time.
For selling stuff at the church, maybe?
We're selling stuff on church property. And they would have came and held up the Bible and said, "You're sinning. Jesus would wipe this place out of you." Here. No, that's not what was happening. We were selling pop pretty much for what it cost at the grocery store. We weren't charging anybody $5 for a can of pop. The pop was donated, and the women's group was making some money so they could do their women thing, whatever their women thing is.
Nobody's moving.
And we were selling the hush puppies. The church didn't pay for the hush puppies, but the money was going for a good thing. Nobody was being extorted. I mean, $1 for 4 hush puppies. I don't know if you've ever eaten the hush puppies, but are they worth $1?
Oh, absolutely.
Huh?
Absolutely.
And people, nothing was inflated, nothing was extorted, nothing was twisted out there. That's not what was going on last Saturday. But I grew up in a Pentecostal church. It took me forever to feel comfortable around a church cookie sale, a bake sale at a church. It was like, you can't do that. This is a church. Well, you can't do that as long as it's upfront and everybody understands. That's not what was happening here. What was happening here was extortion and fraud. That's what was happening. All right, any questions on that? The first interrogation is going to have to wait till next week. Do I talk too much?
No, absolutely not.
My wife says I didn't use the word ramble. She says, yeah. Must not be important, I guess.